This will probably go down as my favorite booth in the entire expo hall. For a long time, I have said that I think what Linux really needs is a beautiful laptop that runs Linux, a high-end laptop that runs Linux. And finally, I think that is coming to fruition with the Librem 15. Now, I was this close to buying the Librem 15, and the only reason I didn't was because they announced that they were going to have a Librem 13. And after living with a 13-inch laptop for a long time, I have figured out that that is the laptop size I prefer. I am blown away and just elated to find both the 15 and the 13 here in Purchase that I can touch. These are real, they're not cardboard. And my savior, Todd, how are you?
Well, that's nice of you to say. I'm fantastic.
All right, so I have so many questions. So first, why did you start Purism? Why does Purism exist?
Man, great question. So initially, it actually started because I have wanted to buy, and every year that I go purchase a new laptop, I basically am like, I want to buy from somebody who has the same belief system I do, right? So so I would hunt around, right? And there's some very great manufacturers, or excuse me, not manufacturers, but installers of Linux on, right? So think Penguin, System 76, et cetera, which are great. But what I want is somebody who's actually going to make sure that all the hardware is manufactured with my vested interest. So what I went, and then I ended up basically saying, after 10 years of trying this and never succeeding in getting a machine that was exactly what I wanted, I then emailed RMS and said, hey, you know what, I want to meet with you, you're coming to San Francisco, let's talk about actually putting out hardware. So at that point, I got to know really from him what the actual belief system needs to be at the hardware level. And so then at that point knew that we can get 99.9% there off of high-end hardware, right? So that's sourcing all the individual chips. So we're completely free from the bootloader, right? The entire kernel, all the software, and all the entire operating system runs completely free. The BIOS itself it, runs free, meaning it's core boot. However, we do include an Intel FSP binary, but we have three dedicated developers to free that BIOS binary. And actually from this conference, we're even, have more and more people are actually interested in doing so. So we also fuse the CPU to run, to actually allow us to run unsigned BIOS binaries. So the long answer to your question is that I really wanted to have a computer that was manufactured with my belief system, and there wasn't one out there, so that's the reason that we started Purism.
When you go to design these computers, what is your opinion of, like, say, a MacBook?
Well, MacBooks are fantastic hardware quality, which is why most developers actually use them. But the issue there is, of course, you're still running binary blobs to actually power most of those chips, so it's not a completely free system. So I do like Mac's hardware, I just don't like their belief system or philosophy.
So, looking at these, it seems like a lot of the physical engineering that went into this is modeled after the same concepts that would drive a Mac user to buy a Mac. It's a very elegant design, it's a very beautiful design, it's built very, very well, there's no flex in here, it's an aluminum chassis, the keyboard feels great, the touch pad feels great, the screen looks nice. Is that all because essentially you're trying to compete with the MacBook?
Well, I do say that the competition that we're actually have out there is Apple with the MacBook, right? High-end Lenovo, because really, from a high-end hardware standpoint, we want to be on the same level playing field. So when someone's considering to buy, that they look at our hardware equivalent to the hardware of the highest-end manufacturers. But then we go beyond that with clearly by having a belief system that's the same as a lot of backers, which of course is that you should have your rights fully respected. So that's where, so it was very much taken from that. However, I will say, even though these versions here are raw aluminum, all the versions we're shipping are going to be raw aluminum with anodized black, so that way we actually, while Apple doesn't have a patent on aluminum, we want to differentiate ourselves, so that way when people open that up, that people are going to know that that's different, that's the Purism laptop. They're not going to come with a logo, right? So they're still going to be super cool, but they will have a logo key, but but that's the only logo that's going to be on the machine itself.
So you said that you are working on getting everything in the stack free, but right now there's one blob that still exists?
That's correct. So, that's at the BIOS level. So all software is free, which means the bootloader, right? The kernel, where there's no binary blobs in the kernel or binaries that are even needed to power any of the drivers, and this operating system and all software. But if we go down low enough, we're actually talking about the Intel FSP binary that has to get loaded inside of core boot. So core boot is free software, but the binary that comes from Intel is required to boot the machine. So that's actually just to get Free Software Foundation Respects Your Freedom endorsement. But there's actually a level below that, which we're also working on to free, which is the firmware within inside of solid-state drives and hard drives. That's not an area that we need. We don't need to complicate the Free Software Foundation's Respect Your Freedom certification by adding that, but that is actually our goal as well. So really, what we want is we want anybody who's interested in that, right? That we want to hire those people because we want to end up freeing those things. Right?
Would you say that the people that that are really, really, really on the extreme edge of that fighting for your freedom, people like Richard Stallman, would they be okay with that blob existing?
No. So Richard Stallman, as an example, he would not use this machine until that BIOS is freed.
So so here's my next question: when you have a machine like this, if I wanted to take Ubuntu 14.04 or Fedora Core 21 or Arch Linux and I loaded it on there, everything would basically work out of the box. Am I right?
Absolutely. Anything that's a Linux-based kernel, so any Linux-based distribution, so anything that's GNU Linux will run out of the box without any BIOS binaries, any binaries required in the kernel level.
So being as people like Richard Stallman would probably use a $200 computer, even if it looked like crap, just because it respected his freedom, and being that this computer is just absolutely gorgeous to look at and runs like every Linux distribution out of the box because it's designed to do that. Have you considered marketing the computer towards a high-end Linux laptop rather than pushing so far on the it respects your freedoms aspect of it?
Yeah, so there's actually a number of audiences that would be interested, right? Since our name is Purism, right? We actually want to have a completely freed BIOS level and even go to the microcode level. And the reason is, so that is our core goal. However, that core goal also picks up these other audiences that you're interested in. So anybody who's interested in just a GNU Linux-based laptop would also be interested in a high-end GNU Linux-based laptop. Right. That is actually probably even the lowest hanging fruit in the core backers, right? So while we are trying to appease the Jacob Appelbaum's, who's now an advisor to us, by the way, as well as Richard Stallman's, because we also believe that, right? But by believing that and being the most pure we can, then we pick up on everybody above that. So, and then but we also are marketing towards anybody who's interested in their privacy as well as their freedom, because so we added hardware kill switches. Which are actually going to be in, they don't happen to be in these prototypes because I've given away all the prototypes that have them to the press. So, but that actually kills the hardware at the circuit level, the webcam and microphone and wireless and Bluetooth. And so those are additional things that actually end up making sure that they respect your privacy as well as freedom. So then we actually, in a typical funnel aspect, we're talking about addressing the hardcore developers who understand what respect your freedom even means, and then by proxy we pick up anybody who's a GNU Linux user, and then by proxy we pick up anybody who's a privacy user, and we actually have solid footing to stand on because our philosophies and the belief system that we have and how we go about manufacturing that.
Do you have any concept or any plans to release this inside of like a retail store, like having Best Buy pick it up, or Office Max, or Newegg, or something like that, or selling at a place where somebody could walk into a store and maybe maybe users don't understand that they should care about their freedom, but then they walk in and they go, "This is a really nice laptop that leverages a lot of the same advantages that Mac OS would leverage, except it doesn't have a lot of the detractors that Mac OS has. I might pick that up instead." Is that something that's on your radar at all?
Yeah, it is. However, to be candid, that's going to be at the earliest. We're talking about 2 years out. And the reason is because it actually takes a long time to negotiate to have those things on the floor. But my end goal, and I even actually envision that comparing, if you have a MacBook with Mac OS running, and you have a Lenovo, right, with Windows running, and next to it you have a Purism Librem with completely free software, right? Then when someone comes there, they can actually buy based off of their belief system, which is, I want a super sexy MacBook, or I want a great made Lenovo, or I want a fantastic made Purism machine, but this one respects my freedoms, that's the one that they would end up going to. So it is our goal to actually end up having the machines physically out there where people can touch them, because even from this show alone, so many people, developers, users come up and actually want to feel what the key clicks are like, right? They want to actually interact. So we do definitely intend to do that. And then we're also contemplating once we're actually shipping, after September, to having a means of actually allowing for demo units, right? So if you want to try it out for a certain period of time, et cetera, right? So we can end up having a handful of units that are actually dedicated to demoing.
You guys decided to go with your own distribution when you launched this laptop, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So, so it's actually called PureOS. That's kind of the great grandchild of Debian, probably my favorite distribution. Debian doesn't happen to be Free Software Foundation endorsed because of their non-free additional library directories. But their main should be Free Software Foundation endorsed. So then Ubuntu is their derivative, right? And then Triskel is a derivative of Ubuntu. And then we base off of Triskel, because Triskel is a Free Software Foundation endorsed distribution. It's a fantastic distribution. So then we are a derivative of that, where we basically add Cinnamon, the desktop environment, and then we add a bunch of privacy related add-ons. So that's usually around browsing. So we add Tor browser by default. We add HTTPS everywhere, random agent spoofer, privacy badger, uBlock, so we can block some newer threats. And so we basically are looking at how we want to approach security.
Why not customize the install of Triskel and just leave it as the laptop shipped with Triskel? It's a recognizable name, and then you guys aren't maintaining a distribution. Haven't you added a whole lot of overhead to your own support in essentially forking the distribution?
Yeah, it's not, so I want to be clear, right now it is not a fork, it's actually package add-ons. We are maintaining all of their packages in our own archive, but they are theirs, right? So for us, we want to be able to add those component parts, but the decision doesn't really just stop there. The longer term for us is that because the marriage between hardware and software is only growing, and defaults are very, very powerful, right? So what we just saw, the writing on the wall, is that if we were just a GNU Linux, hardware maker where you can you select your OS, that your distribution you want, and then just install that, then we kind of artificially constrain the audience size of who actually would want a default, Linux on the desktop. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to pick a distribution that has the same belief system that we can then end up adding onto to build out. So when when someone gets the machine, all the software on it is default to protect them. It's easy to use, and we can end up rebranding or improving upon the software by default. And so our goal is to hire more software developers to improve upon the actual OS, the UI of the OS, the usability of the OS, the interactivity of the OS, and we actually also have some, grandiose plans later on, many years down the line, where we can start to write services that actually can be freed as well.
That's unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. So you started with the 15-inch version. I had a 15-inch laptop, and I swore by it for years and years and years, and a company I did a short stint with, they issued me a 13-inch laptop and said, this is what you'll use. And I said, yeah, I'll take that, I'll put it at home, and I'll take my 15-inch one because I like my 15-inch laptop. I used it once on an airplane. I was sold. 13-inch, I will never go back. Why is it that you guys, and so many companies are doing this? Dell has discontinued most of their 13 inches. Lenovo has discontinued most of their 13 inches. They've gone to either 14 or 12.5. Why is it that you guys went from the 15 to the 13?
Wow, that's a great question. So we initially, when we were actually looking to source materials, you take reference designs. So these are designs that manufacturing is already tooled for, and then we can leverage those. So the reason that I don't have to place a 50,000 unit run or a 1,000,000 unit run is because I can leverage reference designs to get to small quantity runs. So that goes for motherboard and cases. So what I looked at was what reference designs exist, what screen sizes exist, what motherboard reference designs from Intel in this case exist, so that way I can manufacture motherboard and component parts. So in that case, the tools that were available, the tooling and the process was available for a 15.6 inch and a 13.3 inch. So it was actually not an active decision of, oh, I really want a 4:3 screen, which we don't have. So that limited me in what I can get. However, I actually also happen to really like when I brought them in and sourced the parts and brought in the case and everything else, that I love the 15.6 inch. I actually like it as a widescreen personally. It's a very wide landscape, especially for coding side by side. And then the 13 inch is also is 1920 1080. But to get to the heart of your question is that mostly those decisions were made because of the reference designs that I can source.
Sure. Now, one of the things that I noticed that you added, so I work my day job, so to speak. I'm an IT consultant. And so a big part of my job is going in and troubleshooting networks. And when I'm doing that, especially in the corporate sphere, we don't have Wi-Fi. We have a switch, and I plug my laptop in. I noticed you guys have a wired jack, even on the 13-inch model.
Yes.
What led to that decision?
Again, actually, that happens to be from the tooling. Okay. So the tooling actually offered a slot that we can put a pop-down RJ45 slack in. The caveat is, it's probably good you didn't get the 15-inch, because the 15-inch Rev 2 is so thin that we don't have that option with the tooling, so we can't have the RJ45, which is a bummer for somebody like me as well. But the 13-inch, the prototypes we already have, the tooling we have in place, the manufacturing run we're going to do, will include the pop-down RJ45 jack.
Now this one, the 13-inch, the Kickstarter, or the crowd supply just launched not that long ago. How are you guys doing on your backers so far?
Well, it's actually interesting you're bringing that up. Is that so? We launched a 15-inch, which closed at about 400 grand of our $250,000. But we did actually have to extend that because I was at the point of running right into the holidays of last year. So we're now shipping that in September timeframe. But when we launched this campaign, we hadn't thought about the obvious thing, which is that when we bring awareness about what we're doing, that someone's still going to want either the 13-inch or 15-inch. Right. So we've now raised an additional 90 grand for the 15-inch when that funds, we really needed it to go towards the 13-inch. Right. So so now we actually are working with. We're probably going to have to extend the 13-inch campaign. For a couple of reasons. One is that it's divided between the 15-inch and 13-inch funding, and I can't mix those to actually fund the manufacturing run of the motherboard. And then also we have a lot of very large press that have our review units that are going to be running articles, and so we want to make sure we can capitalize on those being run.
You guys did something very interesting, and I noticed this on your website, and it really struck a chord with me. You can buy a credit towards a purchase. Like, let's say I'm a person and I'm like, I love what Purism is doing, but I want to see I'm not sure which one I want yet, so I want to wait until both of them ship and people have them in their hands and they've tried them, and then I want to buy one. But I really want this company to succeed, so I really want to support them now. You can buy credit towards one of these laptops, even if you're not buying a laptop yet, and then use that credit towards the laptop when you finally make your decision. What led to that concept?
Well, actually, like most things, especially in the 15-inch campaign, is backer feedback, right? Is that, so there's a bunch of people who are like, I want to make sure there's a review put out before, beforehand, but they're interested enough in the product. So we actually offer a $500 coupon for $450. And you can get as many of those as you want, actually, so it's a great way to actually end up buying a bunch of those coupons and using them. So we did that because backers were interested in doing that, and we're like, that's a great idea, and so it was actually introduced by the user feedback. And so one of the great things about that is then that allowed us to make sure that we also know that, hey, people want this reviewed. So Kyle Rankin from Linux Journal reviewed the 15-inch, and he actually just published maybe about a week and a half ago a review of the 13-inch version, and then we have a list of about it's about 20 long of review units. We don't actually have enough review units of our prototypes to get them out there, and we're just trying to pump them out as quickly as we can.
There was a number of things that seemed to be inspired by feedback. I think the entire revision to a lot of those changes came from your feedback, right?
Absolutely, actually. So the first revision was basically me creating it in my basement, a year and a half ago, and then putting something out there like that. Then I ended up hearing feedback, right? And then we started to just tabulate that feedback and say, you know what, we can go back to the drawing board. manufacture our own motherboard, right? That can support 32 gig of RAM and and have a 4K screen and so then there's a couple also that backer feedback that comes in. So really the Rev 2 literally is backer designed, right? And then we took a lot of those designs and applied them to the 13-inch already. So it's great. It's been great.
I can't tell you how much I support and enjoy what you're doing. I think this is super cool. I really, really, really hope to be one of the first people to get my 13-inch version when it ships. You said you're hoping those will come ship September?
So right now our plan is to ship September, but if we actually extend the campaign, then we're in a balance of, do I place the order before my funding goes, right? Which I can do, but then I'm basically locking in that it's going to succeed. Or do I delay it? And because of our campaign with the 15-inch, and we have so many people that are interested and so many people that are supporting us, that that's kind of we're at that decision point now. Do we pull the trigger and run our and place the order to manufacture the motherboard so that way we can meet the September ship date for the 13-inch? If we don't, then however long we delay the campaign, let's say it's 30 days, let's say it's 45 days, then we're going to tack that on the end. So that would be October, November-ish, if at the latest, for the 13-inch campaign. The 15-inch is going to be shipping September.
And where should everyone be going right this minute, right this time, to go order their Librem 13 or their Librem 15?
You can go to Crowd Supply, CROWDSUPPLY. It will appear right here. Crowdsupply.com.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. We really appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.